Hi, my name is Thomas Sexton. Today, I'm building a custom desktop computer. With me, I have my A+ Guide to Managing and Maintaining Your PC by Gene Andrews, 8th edition. I'm also currently taking a class on computer hardware at my city college. If you're trying to build your own custom computer, I suggest you watch this video and as many other videos on YouTube to get the right kind of comprehension. So without further ado, let's get started. Having a clean workstation is very important. Dust particles can get in between components while you're assembling it and damage things later on. Also, do not use metal surfaces. Use plastic, wooden, or laminate tables to build your desktop. Kind of like if you were in a cooking show. It's good to have all your ingredients, or components, laid out in front of you, so you know which parts you're going to assemble first. Okay, so as you can see, I got all my parts laid out here, but before we start putting this thing together, I'd like to go over some general safety issues that comes to handling a PC. So let's talk about electrostatic discharge, ESD, the computer's natural enemy. So electrostatic discharge is basically when you have a charge in your body, an electrical charge. The experts will tell you to use a ground bracelet or a wrist or an anti-static wrist strap in order to move all the excess charge that you have in your body into the metal casing. This is my computer case. It's called an AeroCool Cyclone 2 Star Cruiser. It's got 2 internal fans, 4 spaces for optical drives, and 6 spaces for hard drives. It can fit 2 types of motherboard forms, ATX and micro ATX. Currently, we will be using the ATX motherboard form. I chose this case specifically because it has 2 internal fans, which is going to help me keep my CPU very cool. And also, it has these spaces behind where I mount the motherboard to route wires through. When you decide what parts to buy for your computer, it's a good idea to design the computer from the motherboard up. The motherboard comes with all the specifications necessary to match the parts. For instance, matching the CPU to the CPU socket. So let's check it out. As you can see here, I purchased the Asus P8 Z77VLX motherboard. This motherboard is PCI 3.0 ready, has SATA 6.0, and a GPU boost. Now as you can see here, I have what they call an aftermarket heatsink, which means it's not the standard one that comes with the CPU when you buy it. Now here's my CPU, the Intel i7 quad processor. Now I matched the CPU up with the slot on the motherboard, which was an LGA 1155. Now for my memory, for my RAM, random access memory, I've chosen the Kingston Hyper Beast. This is 16 megabytes of random access memory, Kingston. Now as you can see, my power supply is 850 watts. Now I don't think I need that much, but I do plan on upgrading this computer over time, so I just wanted to be ready. I have here a 3.5-inch Western Diamondback black 1 terabyte hard disk drive, HDD. Now I chose the hard disk drive over the solid state drive, SDD, because currently solid state drives are very expensive. Now for my optical drive, I've chosen a Blu-ray player / DVD burner, just so I can keep with the times. The company's name is Light On. Now I didn't quite know what kind of graphics card I wanted for this computer, but after reading a few reviews, this Radeon HD 7750 by Diamond can handle pretty much anything, including 3D, so I can get into some 3D design. There are 4 screws that are made to be taken off by hand. They just come undone like that. Let's take off the front of this case and look inside. There's 1 screw, and there's the next screw. Now the next step is there's this little bar right here. All I have to do is pull back on that, click, and then this comes off just like that. So as you can see, there's these openings right here for an extra 1x14mm fan. Now as you can see here on the inside of the computer case, there's a whole mess of wires, and we'll go over those in a bit. But right now, I want to look at this internal fan. It comes with the computer case, as the 4-pin auxiliary power right here, and then a fan controller. Now as you can see, there is the front panel header connection. Now I finally understand what front panel connection means. For instance, these plugins right here, they have to plug into somewhere. So you have a USB 2.0, two connections right here, a headphone jack and a microphone jack, and an extra eSATA for external hard drives. Now a front panel header is basically the wires from the front panel that connect into your motherboard through these wires right here. Now there's the inside of that. Now as you can see right here below the fan, there's 7 expansion slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now if you can see right here, this is the hard drive mount, and there's this interesting little box right here that slides out. There's these two little, yeah, just like that. Inside this little box I pulled out here, there seem to be some rails and this little thing, which is a speaker that plugs into the motherboard. And finally, it looks like I have some spacers here. Spacers are important from keeping the motherboard from touching the metal case or pretty much anything else. The motherboard is essentially floating on top of these spacers. Okay, so let's take a look at the power supply. This is the Corsair TX850, 850 watts. Here's my warranty guide and my instruction manual. There's my main power cord for the power supply. And then here's the incredible amount of cables that come and hook up to the motherboard. So now that I've untangled this mess of wires, let's take a look at this first one here. This is the 20 plus 4 pin or 24 pin connect, P1 connect. It's the main power supply to the motherboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install my power supply into the computer case. Now, as you can see, there's a vent on the bottom of the case with the dust panel. So that's going to line up with the fan, the intake fan on the power supply. And the power supply fits right into this space with the 4 little squishy pegs here. Make sure all the wires are out of the way. Should slide in right between these slots and underneath there. And then on the back of the computer, there should be 4 holes that line up with the computer case on the power supply. This is where it screws in. Alright, so attaching the power to the computer case requires 4 screws, and the computer case came with this big bag of screws. I'm just kind of guessing right now which ones go into these slots. Now I'm using a non-magnetic screwdriver. Very important to be non-magnetic so you don't damage any internal components. Now that I have my power supply installed and this whole mess of cables, it's time to take a look at the motherboard. So the motherboard, being probably the most important piece of the entire computer, comes in this fancy static-proof plastic bag. So let's get to know the motherboard. So here on the motherboard you have the CPU socket. This socket is an LGA 1155, which matches up with the central processing unit that I purchased, Intel i7 LGA 1155. Here's 4 DIM slots, dual inline memory module slots for your RAM cards, your random access memory cards. Right here is the 24 pin connect power supply. This is a USB 3.0 controller head. Right here we have the Z77 chipset. So the north and the south bridge are underneath this. Here I have 6 SATA connectors. 2 of them are 6.0 and the other 4 are 3.0. Over here we have our PCI expansion slots. We have 2 PCI E/16 slots, which can house 2 graphic cards. Then we have the regular PCI, and this is PCI 3.0. We have 3 regular slots, and then a PCI by 1 slot right here. Here on the back panel port, we have the keyboard or mouse port, 2 USB 2.0s, an HDMI, Firewire, DVI, VGA, 2 USB 3.0s, 2 more USB 2.0s, an RJ45 port or Ethernet port, and then your standard audio jacks. So now that I'm ready to install the CPU, I need one essential tool. It's called the ground bracelet. This is the ground bracelet. There's a metal piece here that will be touching my skin and, helping all the electric static charge off my body onto the computer case. Where the end of this is a little clip. And this clip attaches to the inside of the computer case. Touches the metal. It's the main part of the frame. Actually, I'm going to put it on this side. Making sure that this part is up against my skin. Okay, now that I have my ground bracelet on and my hands are clean, I'm ready to install the CPU. As you can see, there's a plastic covering protecting the land grid array. And sometimes it's a pin grid array, but on this one specifically, it's land grid array. That's just what the model said. So, plastic covering's off. As you can see, all these pins are down here. Be careful not to touch the pins. There's 2 parts that come in the box with the CPU. There's of course the CPU itself, the central processing unit, and the heatsink. Now I'm not going to be using this heatsink because I bought a aftermarket heatsink. This heatsink is the standard that comes with Intel. It's pretty good. As you can see, it comes with thermal paste, but I bought thermal paste and the aftermarket heatsink to apply it myself. Now here is the brain of the computer. This is the central processing unit. I have to be very, very careful. Now as you can see, there's like these little slots here, so I can just pick it up without touching the top or the bottom. Now there should be a way to properly align this. As you can see, there's a notch there and there. And there's 2 plastic pegs right there to line those up. And this is what's known as ZIF, zero insertion force, which means that I shouldn't have to put any pressure on this at all. I should just be able to hold it right over, gently, gently let it go, and there it is. I'll put the cover back down. Here we go. And my CPU is now installed. Ground bracelet and everything. So as I mentioned earlier, I bought an aftermarket heatsink. And they call it aftermarket because it doesn't come with your CPU and it's not standard. As you can tell, the aftermarket heatsink is massive. It actually comes with its own thermal paste, which I didn't know about until just now. So here it is. You have the heatsink fins that help conduct heat upward, and this giant fan on the other side that'll help conduct heat out. Alright, so the mounting piece lines up with the 4 holes on the motherboard. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm now removing the fan from the top of this heatsink. So now that I've removed the fan from the face of this, from the face of the fins, put my bracelet back on, I can now attempt to attach this to the CPU. This aftermarket heatsink comes with a whole mess of parts here. I'm using the plastic spacers. It comes with both metal and plastic spacers. These plastic spacers are going to go right on the motherboard on top of these holes where the screws are going to go into. Now these actually come with adhesive tape. So the plastic spacer gets the adhesive here, and then it should just come up and off of this. Oh, look at that. Now, very carefully and accurately, I'm going to place this. Very good. Now let's do that 4 times. Now that I have the plastic spacers on the front of the board, I actually have to flip the motherboard around and attach this back panel here. Lines up with these 4 slots. This back plate's going to catch the screws coming off the front of the heatsink. The next step, these also mount the heatsink, and they go on top like this. Okay, now I'm installing the mount here. So this next step is really important. According to the instructions, I'm simply going to lay 1 strip of thermal paste across each one of these 4 copper coils right here. Is that how it's supposed to look? The syringe is stuck. Wait, that was it. That was all the thermal. Okay, well, the thermal paste that came with the Arctic heatsink, they kind of skimped me a little bit, but it's okay because I bought a 12-gram case, so screw Arctic. Yeah, I'm not sure what happens when you mix different brands of thermal paste. This is on complete accident, but let's just hope that everything is gonna be cool. Alright, here's the defining moment. So now that this is down, and hopefully that thermal paste is on there properly, I'm going to attach the rest of this. So now that I have my enormous heatsink attached to my motherboard, the fan header is right here. It says CPU fan. And it can only be installed one way. They have these little fins on the back. There we go. It's time to install my RAM cards. For the DIMM slots, or the dual inline module, I got my Kingston 16 gigabyte Hyper Beast. So as you can see, these cards actually come with their personal heat sinks. And I'm taking advantage of the dual channeling by getting 4 of these. So if you come look on this side, they have these clips right here. Now, all you have to do is line up the notch in the center with the notch here, and it's off center, so you can't put these in wrong, really. A little bit of pressure, it should just clip, like so. Alright, RAM is installed. Okay, so the next thing I would like to install is my hard drives and my optical drives. I have my Blu-ray player right here. I've taken off the plastic casing right here where the Blu-ray player mounts, and it should just slide right in. Okay, now that I have my optical drive installed, next step is to install the hard drive. Here's my hard drive slots right here. The 1 terabyte hard drive gets installed into the hard drive slots, which this is capable of both HDD and SSD. These rails right here get installed on the sides, and then it just kind of slides inward. So now I have these rails installed on the side of my hard drive that came with the computer case. Should just slide right in. There we go. So this computer case that I bought has the ability to house different size motherboards. What I need to do is I need to take these little metal screws and set it up for an ATX standard size. Now there's 6 holes on the motherboard, 6 really obvious holes here. These are where the spacers are gonna mount. It doesn't actually have it marked which holes I need to set these screws into. So I'm just doing this empirically. I'm finding the holes on the motherboard and trying to match them perfectly where the spacer should go inside the computer case. Just like that. So now is a slightly difficult part, kind of delicate part. I'm a little delicate about it. I'm installing the motherboard into the chassis. So I'm gonna have to line this up properly. This direction, like so. I just had an epiphany.
We should lay it down.
Oh yes.
I wanted to say something, but I was like, I probably shouldn't interrupt.
I'm laying my computer case down to install my motherboard. Now before I install the motherboard, I need to attach the rear port plate, which goes right here. And that's to cover all the ports and just make it look nice and neat. Now that I have the back panel plate on, I'm ready to install the motherboard. I'm being very gentle, very careful, making sure that everything lines up properly. Should land right on top of the spacers. Getting really, really close. My motherboard is now mounted inside my chassis. Same with my power supply, my hard drive, 1 terabyte, and my optical drive Blu-ray right here. The last thing I need to install is my graphics card. I'm going to wait to install my graphics card. I'm going to try to do a little cable management here. And the reason I chose this chassis over any other computer case is because it has these little slots right here that come out on the backside. That way I can feed the cables in that I need to and keep the other ones out of the way. So now I'm going to hook up my power supply. This particular power supply can actually support a server computer because it has multiple CPUs, plugs, and multiple PCI, more than I need. I'm going to have a lot of extra cable. I have my 24-pin power to the motherboard hooked in. I have my fan hooked up to the CPU fan header. I have 2 SATA 6.0 cables, which I'm going to use one of these to plug into my hard drive, and then I'm going to use the second one to plug in my Blu-ray drive. The front panel header is usually color-coded. It's to make sure that all the buttons on the chassis work to activate the computer, or reset the computer. It's nice that some of these are oriented so that you can only put them in one direction. Doesn't mean it's easy. Right now I'm working on my cable management. I'm trying to get all these nice and neat to just tuck in right in here. So here's all the cables I don't need. So I hope that I have all the front panel headers connected properly. It's really not color-coded like I thought it would be, like it said in the instructions. But if I have those incorrectly, then I'm on my last component, which is my graphics card. Ooh, a VGA DVI adapter. That's cool. Here's the instruction manual and driver. And $10 off. Sure. Okay. So this looks like another anti-static plastic bag, which I'll just keep that around with this other one, just in case. Here it is. Here's my diamond graphics card. Alright, so I'm ready to install my graphics card in my PCIe by 16 slot. Now it's a double slot, which basically means I had to remove 2 expansion slot panels. This should just slide in nice and easy. And I should hear a slight click. Like so. Okay, so this is a learning process for me. This is the first time I've ever put a computer together. I may have made a few mistakes. I don't know if everything's right. But, as far as I know, everything's installed properly. I'm ready to put the case back together and give this thing a test run. Here we go. Yeah! It's been a long day. There it is. But this is hooked up to my TV, which has a DVI in the back. I got my wireless mouse and keyboard right here. And this is the defining moment where I switch on the power. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. This is a learning process. And I'm pretty sure I just hooked up the front panel header wrong, which means that the power button just doesn't work. So, this is attempt 2. After consulting the Holy Scriptures, I found out that my front panel header was in wrong. This is attempt number 2. Time's a charm. Alright. 3rd time's a charm. Okay? So let me ask you something. Does that look like a power button? Does that look like a power button? Because it's not a power button. In fact, that's the power button.
What Pizza City?
What? So that's it. I took it apart, I put it back together. This is try number 6. Thank you very much. JP, hit the lights. It's alive! Here is my BIOS setup, where we will find out the boot sequence, the devices that it detects, and we can mess with the settings. Name the computer, maybe. Press F1 for setup. Oh wow.
This is like the coolest BIOS screen ever.
That's not like the old school stuff at all.
Dude, seriously, this is like the cool... Oh my god!
It's actually a mouse.
And you actually have a mouse on a BIOS. Holy sh...
ASUS BIOS utility, easy mode. And look, boot priority, it already detects the optical drive that I installed, and the hard disk drive. The optical drive